Thank you for coming to our event, Technology, a Weapon or a Tool, Creating a Healthy Digital Culture. Here at CSW, you've probably heard many events. If you haven't, you will, on this theme, and it's a very important theme. First of all, we want to thank the Nigerian Mission for allowing us to use their space. And second, we want to thank United Families International, who is the NGO sponsoring this. If you want more information on United Families International, I'll mention this again. You can go to UnitedFamilies.org. They have quite a few fantastic resources for promoting women, children, families, society, and healthy ways. So my name is Dr. Tim Rarick. I'm a professor of child and family advocacy at BYU, Idaho. I work with a lot of organizations, including the United Families International, to promote and protect the family. And I've had the privilege of coming to CSW for about 10 years now at the United Nations. I'm going to just mention that I and many others here have probably heard presentations that have talked about technology solely as a weapon or solely as a tool. So we hope to answer that question and find some good balance. If you go back to our theme, is technology a weapon or a tool? I think the answer is yes. It depends. I guess the short answer is it depends. I have 4 children myself. They're all teenagers. One of them is a college student. And I've been pretty immersed in the research on the effects of digital technology, the quantity that's consumed and the quality that's consumed for many years. So what that can do to me is it can make me more paranoid as a father. It can make me, oh my goodness, the Chicken Little, the sky is falling. I don't know if you've heard that before. But I've felt that before. And that makes me a more anxious parent. And that can cause me to be more controlling. What I've learned is kind of what Jaron spoke about. I've learned when I got so frustrated with my teenage son, who's 19 now, that he was like a moth to the flame when it came to video games. So pretty. He just couldn't resist. It seemed like he couldn't resist. We had restrictions, but he just couldn't seem to. And the more I rode him about it, the more I got on his case, the more that drew up a wedge between me and him. Guess who I blamed? Him and technology. Once I woke up to realizing, I think it's my really hard heart that's the problem. My pride is the problem. I started to play video games with him, like Jaron's dad, and we got closer that way. And we were able to do other things together. He was more likely to go on walks with me and do other things. So, something my father once taught me, by the way, I'll say one more thing. I have 3 daughters, ages 16, 14, and 12. She'll be 12 in 2 weeks. And what the research is showing is absolutely clear on the impact of social media on adolescent females' mental health, anxiety, and depression. So my daughters, when they wanted a smartphone, they knew exactly where my wife and I stood. We've shared the research with them in a developmentally appropriate way. I'm not going to quote peer-reviewed language because they wouldn't understand it. But we shared the research with them. So when it was time for them to want a smartphone, they wrote down they created a presentation and tried to persuade us to give them a smartphone with PowerPoint slides and everything. I was so impressed. So what we did is we ended up giving each one of them, well, our youngest, Eleanor, does not have one. But it was time to get them one. We gave it to them with a lot of restrictions. And they're the ones who were part of the conversation when it came to restrictions. My daughter, Molly, who's 16, she said, she wrote a manifesto, my smartphone manifesto. And if I had it here, I'd read it to you. And she knew how harmful it was. She watched her friends, her teenage friends who are girls, struggle with conversation, struggle with mental health. She saw, shall we say, the fruits of misusing technology, so we could point her to that. And so in her contract, or her manifesto, she said, I only want these 5 apps. I don't want social media because I see what it's doing. And I thought what a beautiful thing that she had the wisdom. She gets that more from my wife than from me, and the foresight to do that. So as we introduce technology, we don't have to do it all at once. Sometimes people think that I need to give the technology to the children, just hand it to them. Okay, I get this question, Dr. Rarick, when should I get my child a smartphone? I'm like, well, I don't think you should just go jump to that. What other technology have been introduced to, and have you taught them to be a good digital citizen or a steward of their technology? And just as babies learn to roll, and they pull themselves up, and they crawl, and then they walk, Children can learn to use maybe a dumb phone, which means it's not a smartphone, no access to the internet, and they can learn incrementally and with a smartphone with restrictions by the time they're in their mid-teens, and this way they don't have to be the victims of the tech conglomerates who just see them as things to be used and to be acquired. So this hits home for me, this topic, and I hope it hits home for you, and I hope we'll be a little bit wiser about it. My father, who passed away 2.5 years ago, he used to quote something, and I never understood it as a child growing up, or even as a teenager. But I'm going to quote it here for you, and I hope it's a good summary for what we discussed. And I can't remember who the original source is, so you'll have to forgive me. You can Google it. Speaking of the benefits of technology. It goes something like this. In this land of princes and kings, and clowns that caper in sawdust rings, and common folk like you and me, each is building and striving for eternity. Each is given a set of tools, a shapeless mass, and a book of rules. And each must make, ere life is flown, a stumbling block or a stepping stone. It is up to us in putting the power in the hands of the parents, educating them so they can raise their children in a healthy way, and the children who don't have good parents, let's get them good materials and healthy people. We can do this because our society is moving forward, as Jen mentioned. We can't go backward, but we can go forward measuredly and with wisdom. Thank you. Thank you for coming, for all those who were in attendance. If you want more resources, again, you can go to UnitedFamilies.org. We'll give you some great resources from United Families International. There's also, if you go to joinraise, RAISE.com, that's a free parenting free app for parents of how to raise digital natives, their children, how digital immigrants' parents can raise digital natives, their children. Does that make sense? So, and there's a lot of other resources out there. Thank you again.